Purity comes at a price. In the silence of a Babylonian garden, a woman walked alone, unaware that hidden eyes watched her with ill intent. That afternoon, virtue became a trap, beauty turned to danger, and truth was nearly buried forever. Few know the story of Susanna, the young woman whose life hung between honor and death, a woman whose refusal to surrender to shame nearly cost her life. What power does the word of two respected men hold against the word of a single woman? When judges become criminals, who can deliver justice? What happened in that garden remained hidden from everyone's view. Only 3 people knew the truth. 2 were elders, men of position, age, and respectability. The other was a young wife, alone and vulnerable. When the accusations arose, it had already been decided who would be believed. The sentence? Death. This is the story of the perfect trap, of false testimony, of sanctified injustice. A tale that reminds us how, even in the darkest moments, when hope seems lost, truth can emerge through the wisdom of the least expected. What reveals more about character, actions at the height of power, or choices made when no one is watching? Susanna's story offers a perspective on integrity and courage that few know. A lesson on how wisdom can unmask lies protected by the cloak of authority. Babylon, 6th century BC. Jerusalem had fallen. Solomon's temple lay in ruins. The promised land was now just a distant memory for thousands of Jews living in forced exile, torn from their homeland by the Babylonian Empire. Among the exiles, some families managed to maintain a certain prosperity even far from home. Joachim, Susanna's husband, was one of these fortunate Jews. While most exiles lived in precarious conditions, Joachim owned a beautiful residence with a spacious garden, an oasis of tranquility in a foreign land. Imagine a garden with leafy trees, fountains of fresh water, the scent of exotic flowers, a small paradise surrounded by high walls that created the illusion of safety and privacy. It was in this garden that Susanna walked every day, seeking a moment of peace away from the eyes of the Babylonian city. Susanna wasn't just beautiful. She had been raised according to the law of Moses, educated in piety and divine precepts. Her faith remained firm even in a foreign land. Her name in Hebrew means lily, a symbol of purity and delicate beauty. And like a lily, her beauty attracted attention. The judicial system among the Jews in exile functioned in a peculiar way. In the absence of the temple and the institutions of Jerusalem, the elders assumed the role of judges and authorities. Men of advanced age, supposedly wise, became the guardians of law and order. 2 of these elders frequently visited Joachim's house, respected, venerated for their age and position. They came to judge cases and resolve disputes in the Jewish community. No one questioned their integrity. No one doubted their word. The houses of that era didn't offer privacy as we know it today. Servants, family members, and visitors shared the same spaces. For a woman like Susanna, the garden represented the only place where she could find moments of solitude, a dangerous habit that didn't go unnoticed. The Babylonian city was a place of contrasts. Pagan temples rose in worship to foreign gods. The people of Israel, distant from their land, struggled to maintain their traditions. For a woman like Susanna, virtue wasn't just a quality, it was a shield, a form of cultural resistance in a foreign land. The 2 elders who frequented Joachim's house began to notice Susanna's beauty. Day after day, they observed her movements, her habits, her moments of solitude in the garden. Desire grew in their hearts, hidden beneath cloaks of respectability. Lust disguised itself as dignity. The stage was set for a tragedy. On one side, a young virtuous woman. On the other, 2 powerful men consumed by forbidden desires. Between them, a seemingly private garden that would become the setting for one of the most terrible injustices and one of the most surprising triumphs of truth that history has ever recorded. The Babylonian summer arrived with its merciless heat. The afternoons became almost unbearable inside the houses. It was on one of these scorching afternoons that Susanna decided to refresh herself in the garden. As usual, she instructed her maids to prepare oils and ointments for her bath. That day seemed like any other. Her husband had gone out on business. The house was quiet. Cicadas sang among the trees in the garden. Susanna walked slowly to the fountain, feeling the heat of the stones beneath her bare feet. "Bring the oils and then you may go. Lock the garden gate when you leave," Susanna said to the maids. Simple words that sealed her fate. Words that the two elders, hidden among the trees, heard with perverse satisfaction, for weeks, perhaps months. The two men had planned this moment. Each had hidden from the other his obsession with the beautiful Susanna, until one day, as they left Joachim's house together, they confessed their desire to one another. Shared shame transformed into complicity. Day after day the elders lurked. They observed Susanna's habits, memorized the maids' schedules, studied the moments when the garden was empty. Patient as predators, they waited for the perfect moment. That hot afternoon finally offered the opportunity they had been waiting for. When the maids left and locked the gate, Susanna was alone in the garden. Or so she thought. She undressed slowly, preparing for the refreshing bath. The water in the fountain reflected the blue sky. The silence seemed complete. Suddenly the sound of footsteps. Susanna turned, alarmed. The two elders emerged from the shadows, their eyes fixed on her with evident desire. Panic overtook her. Instinctively she tried to cover herself, but it was too late. "Don't try to scream," said one of them, his voice a threatening whisper. "We're alone here. No one will come to help you." The other elder approached, his words falling like heavy stones. "The doors are locked. No one can see us. We desire you. Consent to lie with us." Susanna's heart raced. Her body trembled, not from cold but from fear and indignation. The two men her husband respected, whom the community venerated as judges and examples of wisdom, now showed themselves as they truly were. "If you refuse," continued one of them, "we will testify against you. We will say we found you with a young lover. We will say that's why you sent your maids away." The threat hung in the air like poison. Susanna immediately understood the danger. The word of two elders against hers. The law was clear. Adultery was punished by death by stoning. Who would believe in her innocence against the testimony of two respected judges? In that moment, Susanna faced an impossible choice: surrender to the elders' lust and live with shame, or refuse and face certain dishonorable death. For a brief moment, fear paralyzed her body, but her faith remained unshakable. Susanna raised her eyes to heaven. Her firm voice broke the silence of the garden. "I am trapped on every side. If I do what you demand, it will be my spiritual death. If I refuse, I will not escape your hands. But I prefer to fall innocent into your hands than to sin in the eyes of the Lord." With these words, Susanna filled her lungs and screamed with all her might. Her scream cut through the silence of the garden, echoing off the walls of the house. The elders, caught by surprise, also began to shout, accusing her. Servants and household members ran to the garden, forcing open the locked entrance. They found Susanna in tears, partially covered, and the two elders standing, pointing accusing fingers in her direction. "This woman is guilty of adultery," shouted one of them. "We just caught her with a young lover." "The young man was too strong for us," said the other. "He fought with us and escaped through the garden gate." The servants looked around, confused. There was no sign of any young man. The gate was locked from the inside, as Susanna had ordered. But who would dare question the word of two respected elders? The news spread quickly through the Jewish community. The beautiful and virtuous Susanna, accused of adultery by the very judges of the people. Joachim returned hurriedly, devastated by the news. The house that was once a symbol of prosperity was now plunged into shame. The next day, a crowd gathered in front of Joachim's house. The two elders arrived, dressed in the clothes of their judicial function. Their faces maintained a false expression of sorrow, as if they deeply regretted discovering such a sin. "Bring Susanna, daughter of Hilkiah, wife of Joachim," they ordered. When Susanna appeared, accompanied by her parents, husband and children, all in tears, a murmur ran through the crowd. How could a woman of such dignified appearance have committed such a crime? Susanna walked with her head covered, a symbol of her modesty. Silent tears ran down her face. The elders ordered that her veil be removed, claiming they wanted to contemplate her beauty one last time. It was an additional cruelty, a public humiliation before the final condemnation. With her face exposed to the crowd, Susanna kept her eyes closed, praying silently. The two elders placed their hands on her head, a formal gesture of accusation according to Mosaic law. "While we were walking alone in the garden," began one of them, "we saw this woman enter with her maids. Then she dismissed them and locked the gate. A young man who was hiding appeared and lay with her. We were in a corner of the garden," continued the other, "and seeing the crime, we ran to surprise them. We clearly saw the two united, but we couldn't hold the young man because he was stronger than us. He opened the gate and fled." The crowd absorbed every word, convinced by the authority of the accusers. No one noticed the small inconsistencies in the account. No one questioned how the elders had entered a locked garden, or how the supposed lover had escaped through the same supposedly locked gate. "This woman, however, we managed to detain," concluded the elder. "When we questioned her, she refused to reveal who the young man was." The sentence was quick and unanimous. According to the law of Moses, adultery was punished by death. The crowd began to prepare the stones. The place of execution would be at the limits of the city. Susanna would be stoned to death, her body left as an example to other women. As they led her to her death, Susanna cried out in a loud voice, "Eternal God, who knows secrets and knows all things before they happen, you know they have raised false testimony against me. I am going to die without having done anything of what these men have maliciously invented against me." Her words seemed like just the desperate pleas of a condemned woman. The procession continued its somber path. Susanna's death seemed certain. The lie had triumphed over truth. Injustice wore the cloak of justice, and no one seemed able to prevent the tragic fate that approached. The funeral procession advanced slowly through the streets of Babylon. At the front, the two elders walked with severe expressions, the personification of justice. Behind them, Susanna followed with her hands tied, her face marked by silent tears. The crowd accompanied them, stones already in hand, ready to execute the sentence. It was at this critical moment that something unexpected happened. Among the crowd, a young, clear voice rose above the murmur, "I am innocent of this woman's blood." The procession stopped. All eyes turned to the source of that voice. There stood a young man, almost a boy, pushing his way through the crowd. His name was Daniel. This Daniel was not a prominent figure in the community. Few knew him. Younger than most of those present, he possessed neither the authority of age nor the position of the elders. What could he know about justice? How dare he interrupt a judgment already concluded? "Are you so foolish, sons of Israel?" questioned Daniel, his voice echoing in the now silent street. "Without judgment, without knowledge of the truth, have you condemned a daughter of Israel?" The silence that followed was profound. The crowd, moments before so certain of Susanna's guilt, now hesitated. The elders, however, reacted with indignation. Who was this young man to question their authority? "Return to the court," continued Daniel, looking directly into the elders' eyes. "These men have raised false testimony against her." Something in the young man's conviction shook the crowd's certainty. Perhaps there was more to this story than appeared. Reluctantly, the people returned to the place of judgment. Susanna, who moments before was walking to her death, now felt a fragile spark of hope. Daniel addressed the people with an authority that seemed far beyond his years. "Separate the two elders, far from each other, and I will judge them." The crowd obeyed, surprised by the young man's command. The elders were separated, each kept where he could not hear the other's testimony. The method was simple, but brilliant. If both told the truth, their stories would match perfectly. If they lied, the contradictions would appear. Daniel called the first elder. The man approached, still maintaining his expression of offended dignity, but something had changed. A slight tremor in his hands, a hesitation in his walk. "You who have grown old in evil," began Daniel, his words cutting like a sword, "now appear the sins you have committed previously, judging unjustly and condemning the innocent." The elder paled. This was not the judgment he expected. From accuser he became accused. "If you really saw her commit the crime," continued Daniel, "tell us under which tree did you see them together?" The question was simple. If the elder had really witnessed the adultery, he would certainly remember this detail. The man, caught by surprise, hesitated for a moment. Then, forcing confidence into his voice, he answered, "Under a mastic tree." Daniel nodded slowly. "Very well, your lie will fall upon your own head." The first elder was taken away, and the second was brought forward. The crowd watched in silence, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. "Son of Canaan, not of Judah," Daniel addressed the second elder, "beauty has seduced you, and passion has perverted your heart. This is how you treated the daughters of Israel, and they, out of fear, submitted to you. But a daughter of Judah would not tolerate your iniquity." The second elder remained silent, his previous arrogance rapidly disappearing. "Now tell me," continued Daniel, "under which tree did you surprise them together?" The man, not knowing his companion's answer, responded with false certainty, "Under an oak tree." A murmur ran through the crowd. Mastic tree, oak tree, two different trees, two contradictory testimonies. The lie was exposed. Daniel turned to all the people, who now understood the extent of the injustice they had almost committed. "Behold, the angel of God, receiving the divine sentence, will cut you in half." The reaction was immediate. The same crowd that moments before was ready to stone Susanna now turned its indignation against the false accusers. The elders, their lie exposed, lost all authority. From respected judges, they transformed into despicable criminals. According to the law of Moses, the false witness was to receive the same punishment that would have fallen on the falsely accused. The two elders were condemned to death, the same death they had planned for Susanna. Hilkiah and his wife praised God for their daughter, whose innocence had been proven. Joachim and all the relatives rejoiced, because no impurity had been found in Susanna. And Daniel, from that day on, became great in the eyes of the people. The young man whom everyone had underestimated revealed himself to be an instrument of divine justice. His wisdom in separating the accusers and questioning them individually demonstrated extraordinary intelligence. More than that, it revealed impressive courage in confronting established authority in the name of truth. This story, preserved in the book of Daniel as part of the Deuterocanonical texts, contains surprising revelations about the judicial system of the time. It shows how authority could be abused, how women were vulnerable to false accusations, and how the word of powerful men frequently overrode the truth. Susanna's account stands out as one of the few ancient biblical texts in which a woman accused of sexual immorality is defended and her innocence proclaimed. In a world where women were frequently blamed and their word devalued, this story presents a revolutionary perspective on justice. Even more surprising is Daniel's role in this narrative. The prophet, who would later interpret dreams for kings and see apocalyptic visions, begins his journey defending a woman unjustly accused. Before facing lions, Daniel faced human injustice in its most insidious form. It is also notable how the story illustrates the danger of false testimonies and judicial corruption. In ancient societies where oral testimony carried decisive weight, the word of respected people could literally mean life or death. This vulnerability of the judicial system is exposed with impressive clarity. The narrative of Susanna further reveals how lust and desire can corrupt even those in positions of moral and spiritual authority. The elders, supposedly examples of virtue and wisdom, allowed themselves to be consumed by impure desires, transforming their power into an instrument of oppression. To discover more fascinating stories like this one, stories that illuminate dark corners of biblical narratives, just subscribe to the channel. There are many other surprising accounts waiting to be revealed, complex characters whose journeys continue to inspire profound reflections on the human condition. Susanna's story echoes through the centuries, speaking directly to the moral dilemmas we still face today. In a world where accusations can instantly destroy reputations, where the word of powerful people frequently prevails over truth, the account of this courageous woman makes us question how much have we really changed. When Susanna faced her impossible choice, sin against God or face death by false accusations, she chose integrity above her own life. How many of us would have the same courage? When we face difficult decisions, away from public eyes, what guides our decisions? Daniel's intervention in the story represents something deeply significant. A young man without recognized position or authority dared to question the established judgment. His example reminds us that truth does not depend on age, position, or power. Sometimes the deepest wisdom comes from who we least expect. The two elders, men who dedicated their lives to interpreting and applying the law, became its worst transgressors. Their fall alerts us to the dangers of power without oversight, of authority without accountability. It reminds us that no position, however respectable it may seem, guarantees moral integrity. The crowd that so quickly condemned Susanna and then turned against the elders makes us reflect on our own tendency toward hasty judgments. How many times do we accept prevailing narratives without questioning? How many truths do we assume based solely on the authority of who pronounces them? This ancient story brings to light surprisingly modern questions about consent, abuse of power, and moral courage. Susanna was victimized not only by the impure desires of the elders, but by a system that valued the testimony of powerful men more than the truth of a vulnerable woman. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this narrative is recognizing how predators frequently choose victims in positions of vulnerability and use their authority as a weapon. The elders knew their word would be accepted without question. They knew the system protected them. This dynamic of power and abuse continues painfully familiar in our days. The figure of Daniel offers hope. It shows that even when entire systems seem corrupted, courageous individuals can make a difference. His approach, separating the accusers and questioning them individually, became the basis for modern judicial procedures, reminding us that the search for truth requires method and rigor. When Susanna cried out to God in her moment of desperation, she did not receive a spectacular miracle. There were no angels descending from heaven or walls crumbling down. The divine intervention came through the courage and wisdom of a young man. Sometimes the answers to our prayers come through other people, in ways we never imagined. Susanna's story remains a powerful reminder that truth, although it may be temporarily obscured, possesses its own strength, that integrity, even when tested to the extreme, is a choice that defines who we really are. In the Garden of Babylon, both injustice and justice flourished. Both grew from human choices, from decisions made when confronted with temptation, fear, and courage. It is in these daily choices, away from public view, that our true character is revealed. Just as Susanna found herself alone in that garden, each of us will face decisive moments where our integrity will be tested. In those crucial hours, when no one is watching, the question remains: what will we choose?